Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we are talking about the 2014 film Kung Fu Killer, starring Donnie Yen.
Also known as Kung Fu Jungle, also known as Last of the Best.
Right, okay. I'm going to say this up front now. I apologise for the pronunciation of all of the names that we're going to attempt other than Donnie Yen, because we can say that one.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because one, pronouncing the actors' names is difficult. Pronouncing some of the character names is equally difficult. So I'm going to say, for every name that we get wrong, you have to just,
have a drink.
Have a drink. Yes. What a great new game.
New drinking game. Kung Fu Killer drinking game.
Whoa,
Kung Fu Killer shots.
I'd start writing just down the initials because it was getting really difficult.
I just put
notes.
job titles. Which is bad.
Job titles.
Yeah.
Man says.
Yeah, man.
Woman says. Okay. So
Okay,
you chose this film, Pete. Do you want to give a little bit of an intro about what it's about?
Yes. So I chose this film on the basis that we'd both seen Donnie Yen in Rogue One and hadn't seen any other of his oeuvre. I think that's the right word. Any of his eggs. Any of his oeuvre. Any of his previous work. So this is one of his more recent ones. I think its international premiere was at the London Film Festival, or one of the London Film Festivals. It is about a man who's in prison who used to be a martial arts instructor for the police.
Yes.
And it's a bit like the martial arts version of The Rock, kind of. It's that kind of someone being released from prison to help with a serial killer type scenario. So yes, it's kind of a police procedural, but with the wire work of a Hong Kong fight movie.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Describe it?
Fair description. Yeah, okay.
Yes. And as it has subtitles, it's much harder to make notes.
It is. I'm glad it's on Netflix because I was able to pause it several times, scribble down some notes, and then press play again, then carry on.
Yes.
But it did make the film a lot longer doing it that way, so I had to kind of try and make notes on the fly, so some of it might be wrong.
It's ditto. I also watched it late at night and fell asleep. And then the next night, I hope I started it from the right place. Otherwise, there's going to be about 20 minutes where you just take over.
Okay.
So, but that is no slight on the film. As Steve is aware, I can fall asleep. I was about to say, no matter how excited I am, but that doesn't sound.
I don't know what on earth you're talking about. But moving swiftly on.
Yes, let's.
So, the film begins with a man coming into the police station who's covered in blood.
Yep.
You don't know who he is or what's going on, other than it's the actor, Donnie Yen.
Yep.
And basically he confesses and says that he's killed someone, but we get these weird flashback images, but we don't know what it's mean. And it's weird that this is almost like a teaser for a TV show, because you get that, and then the credits start rolling. And I thought,
it's a great cold open.
Yeah. But it felt to me like I was watching an episode of some cop show or something, because suddenly it's teaser, and here are the credits.
Yeah. Had it been an episode of Hawaii Five-0, we'd have gone 24 hours earlier, and the whole episode would have built up to that point.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
And in a way, it kind of does.
It kind of does, yes. So it jumps forward 3 years, I believe, at this point.
That's correct.
After the credits. And I thought I recognised the music at the start of this film, but I don't know if it's true. There's a Mongolian band I like called Hangai.
Right.
And it sounds a bit like them, but they're not listed in the credits. So I don't think it was them, but maybe Mongolian throat singing. I'm not very good at telling them apart from one another. It's possible. But it had that kind of feel.
Okay. Interesting. Right. Mongolian throat singing
I could already
aside.
feel you mentally editing this bit out.
Yep. So Mongolian throat singing aside, we're introduced to this prisoner who we saw before, Donnie Yen's character. Yeah, so it jumps forward 3 years, and apart from the throat singing, there's a car crash with a Ferrari that's been knocked upside down and smashed against a wall. And there's a man on the road, the person who was assuming was driving the car, And we realise, as the police are looking at his body, we realise that he was killed not by the car crash, but by hand. Parts of his body are crushed.
There's a Glock gun there, and it's been fired, but it didn't hit anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they start examining the body, it's like, well, it's, it's been done by bare hands, but to a level that you wouldn't expect someone to be able to do.
Like he's saying, his throat is crushed here, and blah blah blah, and his bones crushed. And one of the police officers is saying, "Is this because of the actual impact of the crash?" And saying, "No, look, this is from someone's hand. He got out the car, or he was knocked out of the car, and they've basically beaten him to death."
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it cuts to a prison where we meet Donnie Yen's character again.
Hahou Mo.
That's right. Who is helping out one of the older prisoners who's got sort of, I don't know if he's got arthritis, but he's got some sort of joints problem or something.
Yeah.
And he's helping him loosen his shoulders up or something.
That's
he's
right.
Quite a helpful young chap.
He is, and you get the sense that, I don't know why, maybe you know why, but some of the other prisoners aren't very happy with the guy that he's helping.
Well, it's not quite clear, but we get the impression that they don't like Donnie Yen's character for whatever, maybe because he used to work
for the police. I guess we find out later, yeah.
So they don't like him, and you can see they want to pick a fight with him, but they don't because they know that he's a trained, he's an instructor.
Yes,
martial arts instructor.
But I guess we don't know that at this point, do we? He's just another prisoner at the moment. But I think it's the whole of the opening of this film is really interesting because so much plot happens really quickly, but it works really well. So the TV's on in the prison, and he recognises the name, I think, of the deceased person.
The guy from the car in the Ferrari.
So he turns around, and it's like, and he's desperate to make a phone call. They won't let him make a phone call. And then he fights all the prisoners. He
just picks a fight to get attention, almost.
He does. But he must fight like 50 guys.
Well, we find out exactly how many it was.
Well, do we?
Yeah, because he wants to make a phone call to tell them about the case, and they won't do it. So he fights all of the prisoners, and then the guards come in with riot gear and get him to stop. And he just stops and squats down. And then they actually do call the police officers who come in to speak to him whilst they're going through their sort of security. She says, well, they all refer to her as Madam.
Madam, they do.
The actress is Charlie Young, and her character is called Look You Sum, but they just call her Madam because she's the head of CID, I guess, like the chief inspector, as it were.
Like Juliet Bravo.
Yeah, if you like. So they just call her Madam. So she comes in and she says, how many was he actually fighting? And one of the prison guards turns to her and says, 17. He beat up 17 of fellow prisoners.
And it's in a very impressive scene.
It's incredible.
All the fights in this film are amazing. And there is a little bit of the queuing up to fight him syndrome, but he's amazing.
At the same time, though, they do get around some of that because there's
they do.
There's that thing where, as you said, someone walks up to him, he fights him, the next person walks up to him. But in the prison, they all rush him at once. And what he does is he'll grab one guy, use him as a shield, knock a couple back, then take out another guy, then take out the guy he's holding. And you see him move from person to person. So it's not like the side-scrolling games we used to play in the arcade sort of thing.
It's not. No, it is very fluid.
Definitely. Incredible.
So we find out a few things during the interview with the madam. She's told that he's a modelling mate, excellent behaviour until today.
Yes.
Then he reveals he once fought the boxing champion who's been killed. And so he says, I fought that boxing champion. I heard the name. I killed someone by accident and turned myself in, but I can help you catch the killer. This is the martial arts murder, and I am the expert martial artist, and I can tell you who... Does he say then I can tell you who the next 7... Oh, I think 7 people are going to die?
Yeah, she doesn't. She says, you can't help me, what do you know? And as she's walking out the door, he reels off 7 names, and he says one of those will be the next victim. And they don't believe him, obviously. And they leave. And then we go to an art museum.
We do. Well, before that, we kind of get this little atmospheric, slow-mo-y kind of vignettes almost of like a cassette tape.
Oh, Chinese opera.
And then writing on scrolls and stuff, which kind of comes into play later. But yes, we are in an art gallery and rather than a giant dinosaur, skeleton, we get a giant human skeleton.
Yes, it's a very interesting exhibit.
Yes.
And I say interesting as in awful. Yes, so the artist is working on it. It's late at night. He's by himself. Yep. And a hooded man comes in with a sort of... well, he's got a limp.
He has got a limp.
Quite quickly.
Quite pronounced limp.
And he's got thick scars on his knuckles, and he's got more scars all over his face than what we can see of his face. And he challenges the artist to a fight.
But they fight on top of the skeleton.
For the first part, yes.
To first start with, yeah.
Because we find out that the artist was previously... I don't think he's a kickboxing champion, but he was a martial arts artist who specialised in kicking or something. Like the second...
think so.
Well, as we learn later in the film, it's the second skill that they progress through.
Yeah.
The first was boxing, which was the first guy.
Yep.
And then kicking is the second sort of ability, and this was the guy who was the best in the world at it.
Yeah, I can't remember where you find that. Yeah, you do... they move through different disciplines, which is quite clever. It's a clever conceit for the film as well.
Because Donnie rattled it off in his interview, and she didn't know what he was on about. She thought he was mad.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's like it's your hand and it's your feet, and it's you. And the better you get to weapon. So it's taking you through like the journey of a martial artist. So we know at this point pretty much that's the bad guy. But it's an amazing fight. And then the pretender that's kind of turned up kills the other guy.
Yeah. It's there's a little bit of wire work, but a lot of it is just really quick.
Very close.
Yeah, and you see them when they sort of kick the giant skeleton. You can see the impact of their feet on. It's obviously not real bone. It's sort of polystyrene or something, but. They're kicking it so hard, they're shattering this thing, and you can see their impacts because they're such strong kickers, and it's so fluid and so kind of elegant the way they're moving. It's brilliant.
And what I really like about that, I mean, at this point, you kind of know that, obviously we know Donnie Yen's character, we now seen what we think is the villain, but they're really contrasting styles because the villain is kind of got this kind of almost jerky, and he almost tries to snap people's bones. He's got this kind of, he pushes against. I think he uses like an Aikido thing, maybe, where they use their strength and he's pushing it back against them. It's it's interesting because you see them both fight through the film, and can guess potentially people can guess if they haven't seen the film already where this is heading. But you do get it's good to have a film where you can really tell the person by their fighting style quite quickly.
Yes, so. This pretend guy kills the second expert, excuse me, and it was as Donnie said would happen.
Yep. I've put here, now it becomes the martial arts Silence of the Lambs, kind of. Because Madam goes to get guy free, doesn't she? She goes to kind of let him, she realises that, he was right and he can help her. And there's a weapon, isn't there? At this point, there's a weapon found in the chest of the guy that was killed. Yes,
it was. Well, we find out later that it's basically something that's been made, and it's a it's a swallow. They call it an Eve swallow. We find out later, and it's just a metal kind of carving that after he's killed the person, he jabs it in their body as like a calling card.
Yeah.
And
then. So what they've picked him up, and then there's another body called in already, isn't there? I think very quickly after the last one, the third murder happens. So this is quite interesting because it's a thing that happens a couple of times in the film, but isn't really referred to. So they go there. There's this body led kind of on a ledge, I think below an apartment, and then Donnie Yen's character is kind of looking at the body, looks up at the window, and then starts to do that thing you've seen in a lot of cop shows where he's starting to piece together what happened. A bit like Misty Knight does in Luke Cage. But then as he starts to do that, it becomes a flashback. And an amazing fight. I think the two guys fighting in the apartment is amazing. It's not often you see someone's head smashed through a fish tank which is in a phone box.
Not unless you're in Britain. No,
that's true. True.
So this guy is a specialist in grappling.
That's right.
And you see from all the wounds on his body, he's got. They look like finger bruises, in groups all the way up his arms and on
Yeah.
his neck and his back. And when they're doing the fight, it's
brutal.
I don't know if it's nerves or nerve clusters or just muscle that they're kind of gripping, but it looks so painful, and is that really kind of wrenching style that they have when they fight. And they're both, it's that thing again, as you said, they're pushing and pulling against each other.
And I think
they're
he's
both very talented at this.
He's got his own style, but he also is using elements of the person he's fighting, because he's kind of working up through these different types of fighter. But that makes it sound like a computer game type of thing, but it's not at all. It's very visceral. But so another great fight scene. So, and it's doing really well at this point, I think, to balance plot and fighting, which, a lot of films like this would have got that balance maybe slightly off. But then, so I was quite unexpected when this happened. So he's worked out what happened. He's looking at the body, and then up on the roof, I think to the side, there's the guy without his hood up.
Yeah, he stood. I think it's just like one roof over.
Yeah,
watching them all on the roof. They've just winched the body up off the sort of ledge and put it back on top of the roof, and they're looking at the body, studying it. And that guy's there watching, and he's grinning.
Yeah,
he's just leering at them.
And I think in a Hollywood film, this wouldn't happen till about an hour in. But here, I mean, this isn't that far into the film at all, and our main character's only just
got out of prison.
Got out of prison, is allowed to be involved, and it's like, but I mean, this does all play out later. And then you get the amazing running through blue sheets on washing lines. Now, I'm assuming it was a hotel or maybe some sort of bulk deal, but it's very artistically done. So they're chasing each other through the streets in amongst all these washing lines, but every single item that's hanging from the washing line is the same size blue sheet.
All that was missing was a couple of doves.
That is true.
Flying past.
That is true.
It would be lovely John Woo style.
That's true. That is true.
But yes, he chases the guy across rooftops.
Yeah.
And he manages to escape.
He does. He jumps across.
But Donnie doesn't go back. He goes on the run.
That's true. This is true. And you think...
And Madam's not happy. She basically said to him when he got out of prison that how quickly you go back and if you get any sort of thing knocked off your remaining sentence is if you help us and you're useful and you don't, break the rules. And so what does he do? He disappears and he's gone.
Yeah. And this is the first time you start to think, okay. And I quite like about this film is that as time goes on, you start to because it follows so many tropes from the kind of serial killer procedural thing, but it's very different because the setting is very different because of the martial arts. But then actually the way that they approach the story is quite different. So he goes back off into the country into a place called Foshan, I believe.
Yes, I think that's what I've written. So somewhere out in the country, basically.
Yeah, and he meets a woman who slaps him in the face and then hugs him.
So I assumed she's his girlfriend. It's not his wife because we hear her name.
I think it's his girlfriend.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if it was his sister, but I think it's his girlfriend.
It was his girlfriend, yes, because her character's called Sin, and they don't share, a name, so therefore I assumed they're not a relative, and therefore it's his wife / girlfriend. So they've not spoken in a while. We don't know if he's been writing to her from prison or communicating with her, but I have the feeling not. I have the feeling he's sort of just not been in touch with her on purpose.
Yeah, because you get the feeling that he's maybe ashamed of what he's done because he killed somebody. Hence, he turned himself in because he goes to like a dojo, to a temple, and gives kind of thanks to I think it's his old teacher. Yes. And he said, he's apologized. I'm really sorry. I went off and I thought it was important to fight the other sects, but I dishonored our sect, and I accidentally killed someone, and I've been punished, and that's as I should be. And again, it's just really interesting kind of characterization stuff. And then at the time, I thought this next bit was a massive contrivance, but then as you get further into the film, you realize it's not. It's just really good foreshadowing. So they find a brooch, just like the murder weapon, and it's been left for our character.
Yeah. You
start to think, that's a bit strange.
And she mentions that somebody came by the school and was asking lots of questions and then left that there for him.
Yeah. So you start to think, it's not as straightforward
as
we've been led to believe. And then you see some kind of, I don't know if they're but in their flashbacks, they just got parallel things where you see the killer.
Yep.
And he's looking after a woman who I again assume is his girlfriend,
his wife, yeah,
or his wife, who's got cancer. Who's getting the very sort of late stages of cancer by the scene.
Hair loss, and he sort of strokes her hair, and a clump comes out in his hand. So it's really kind of, she's not well at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we get, it's not just a thing of he's evil just cause. We don't really know, other than he's very angry and that he suffered some kind of a loss. That's about all we know.
I've put here angry training.
Very angry.
Yeah.
Very angry. Yeah.
And our guy's having some bad dreams as well. So there's kind of mirrors between the two characters in a way at this point. And then he starts does he do research into the Swallow Badge at this point? I'm trying to remember how that happens.
Let's have a look. So he asks the girlfriend, and she's told him that the guy came by and dropped off.
That's right. And they go and see some old experts. That's right.
And she's already looked up on the internet before they go that this guy, who he is, and found out a bit more about him.
That's right. And I think he says that the original Swallow Badge was a gift from the Ministry of War. And these are recreations. I think that's what happened.
Yes, he said it was something from the olden days, very ancient, where when you defeated someone, you gave them one of these things, but actually it was a mocking thing to show that you beat them and their ability is quite poor. Yeah, that's what it's all about. So it's nothing to do with respect at all.
And I think then at this point, if I remember rightly, although he's gone on the run, he's basically got this evidence, to see his girlfriend, so he rings the madam.
Yes. And tells her what he's been doing, where he is, and what he's found out.
Yes. And again, straight away from this, I think they work out where the guy was living, don't they?
Well, they've got it's because whilst they're there talking to this expert, this old guy stands up and says, I know who he is. And he said, what do you mean? And he said, you mentioned he's got a limp. And he said, yes. And he said, he came in 2 years ago.
Yes,
he came and challenged me. And I thought, what? Was he just warming up? That he went and challenged this old guy to a fight. And he beat him, but he didn't kill him for some reason. So he gives him his name because he says it's something very old. It's an old style name.
Yeah, that's right. And he explains to him he had this handicap, which meant he couldn't really fight, but he uses the handicap as his weapon.
Yeah, his left leg is atrophied, but he's overcome it, which has made his skill that much more impressive.
Yeah.
And the character's called Feng Yu Sao.
That's the one.
I attempted it, I tried. I'm not going to try the actor's name because I'm just going to butcher that.
I think it was Bob.
Okay. I'm just going to say that, yeah.
I've put here, the case itself was very easy at this point because people are starting to reveal what they know.
Yes.
But I thought, the rest of the film is just going to be people telling people what they know. But actually it does kind of work because the way they tie everything together, it is all part of, basically, the martial arts world is the bit that Donnie Yen's character understands that the police don't. So by him exposing them to this world is the only way they can solve this case.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's a little bit convenient, a little bit kind of Basil exposition.
Yeah, I mean, well, the more so than that is when she decides that his girlfriend should stay with them because it keeps him focused on the case. I guess it stops him running off.
Yeah, again.
He said, that's okay, as long as she can bring her sword. She always brings her sword everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And I think... Yeah, do they go to his house now and find nothing there? Does that happen straight away?
Let's have a look. So what
before the bit with the stuntman. This could be the bit where I fell asleep.
So he's outmaneuvered by his girlfriend and the madam, so she gets to stay with him. She says, well, what's next? You've had boxing, you've had kicking, you've had grappling. What comes next? And he says swords. Swords is the next thing. So they go to see who would be next on his list, which is the man who taught him, his swords master, and he's now a chef. Do you remember this?
Is he a chef?
Yeah, he's running like his own kind of sort of noodle place, and they sit down and have the meal with him. And Donnie's about to warn him, and he says, well, he won't come after me. I can't even lift a sword anymore. And he said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, 2 years ago I was in a car crash. And he shows him his arm, and there's a massive scar up it. And he says, it's full of pins now. I can't even hold a sword. And so suddenly think, right, he's not going to go after him. Who's he going to go after? And they thought they knew who was next. And suddenly it's like, we've no idea now. But they go, oh, wait, who was your protege? And that's when it gets, the next fight is brutal. And
that's the stuntman?
Yes, so this is where his protege is the stuntman.
The scene you've just described is the scene I missed by watching it again after falling asleep.
Okay.
Because I was like, I've got no paragraph about this. Why is that? That's why. So yes, I put the killer turns up at a film set and he's mocking the guy. Basically, it's like, you've got all this skill and you're using it to be a stuntman, which is clever and funny because there are more stuntmen on the typical Hong Kong fashion. There's loads of stuntmen in this film. And, obviously a lot of stuntmen in Hong Kong cinema are also the actors. So I thought that was quite funny, quite knowing.
Yeah.
But then everyone else leaves. I just thought that was quite funny.
Well, he does say to them, you should all leave now. And I thought,
I don't know. If someone was going to kill one of my colleagues, I think I'd at least, and there's enough of them they could have stopped him.
He has got a sword.
Oh, he has, yes, but
Hey, Pete, if you want to go after a man with a sword, all you've got is
if I was surrounded by 50 other people, I'd give it a go. I wouldn't just run off. I think it's a bit wrong.
Come on, everybody, you'd say, and charge forward, and then we'd watch you get cut in half and go, nah.
It's the kind of thing I say in my head. I imagine in real life I'd probably be the first one at the door.
There's a peach-shaped hole in that wall.
It's true.
Later, losers.
I always imagine if I was ever in a bank robbery, I'll be the guy on the floor with a gun in his pocket, but I don't know where I've got the gun from.
It's an imaginary gun.
It's an imaginary gun in an imaginary scenario in my imaginary head. But the sword fight is unbelievable.
Oh.
It's a high point of the film, I think.
It's incredible. I don't like the bit when they go for the pipes. I know it's foreshadowing something that comes later on. It was such a distraction. It was just like a real, I don't know, but you've gone from incredible sword play, and there was some wire work here. You couldn't. It's almost like that Crouching Tiger thing where they jump and then slide backwards out of reach. Yeah,
I mean, this is when I think it becomes really noticeable, and then it becomes more noticeable. I think it's almost like it is like a bit like a computer game in a way, because the higher up the pecking order you're fighting, the more almost superhuman their abilities are.
Yes. Yeah. But yes, the sword fight is incredible. It's really, really fast and brutal. And the other guy is quite good. And this is what puzzled me, because the stuntman, the protege, cuts him, and we see him take a slice out of him, and it doesn't seem to have any kind of impact or any kind of effect on him. And I'm not completely sure why it didn't really, wound him.
But, does it not cut even... Does he not react to being cut, or does it just physically not cut him?
He doesn't react because we know he gets blood because they test it later on, don't they?
Maybe it's because he's on a film set. It's a dummy sword, and it's not sharp. Possibly.
Anyway,
or he's so focused he hasn't got time to have pain. I'm sure that's in something else. Then in the end, he kills the guy and sticks the swallow in his leg.
Yeah, not really very nice.
No.
If I'm honest.
No.
So at this point, Madam's in trouble because her boss, Inspector Lim, says, "Look, you've got him out of prison. Sorry, Inspector Lam, sir, they'll call him. You've got this guy out of prison. We've got 3 bodies. I'm getting pressure from upstairs. You've got, you need to sort this out." And she says, "Just give me 72 hours to sort it." So suddenly now it's not only the pressure and the fact that more people are dying. Donnie Yen's probably going to have to go back to prison. It's that she's now in trouble, and if she doesn't sort this out, that's probably the end of her job.
Yeah, and they find a scrap of cloth, don't they, at this point? I don't know if they work out about it yet. I don't think they do yet. No, it's later. Yeah. They work out that it's got phosphorus on it, which means he must be from a certain... No, sea salts, that's right. So he must be from near the water.
Something like that.
But she's starting to work through it now and go, hang on, there was something you said about you start at the inside and you add weapons. So she's totally bought into the main character's thought process.
Yes.
And then this is, one of the bigger cliches.
Go on.
Very Luther. Then there's an incoming call to the police station.
Who could it be?
It's the killer.
Yes.
That's not what he said.
Hello, it's the killer. Is that? Oh, he's got a funny voice. He didn't mention he had a funny voice, just a limp. Oh, yeah, that was the other thing I should have said. Funny voice.
That is true.
Hello, it's the killer.
Yeah, I wasn't asked to dub this film. I don't know why. I was waiting, but no.
The call never
call never came. No. So they managed to trace the call, and he's basically, come to me or your beloved is dead. And I want you, and you need to come and try and kill me. Yeah. He makes a big deal of that, doesn't he?
Yes, he's basically said, as it's I'll hurt your family and friends as the motivation for him to get off his arse and actually fight him himself. At this point, Madam is getting a bit suspicious of our main character because she thinks he's involved.
Yes.
Because she said that he picked the 7 names and it's happening as he said.
The guy's ringing him.
Yeah, he's
challenging
talking to him.
Yeah.
So she looks into his prison record. She looks into who came to visit him at the prison and thinks that he's in on it and it was all part of a plan to get him out of prison.
Yep. And it kind of builds up to that because the SWAT team goes to the sauna, I believe.
Yes, so they trace the call of where he's rung Donnie from. They get there and he's gone, but there's just a cell phone in a sauna.
Yeah, and this is when she starts to question it, as you say. She asks for the record of his visitors when he was in prison, and they see a video of the killer visiting Donnie Yen's character, passing him a note, and Donnie Yen's character smiling. And that's when they find sea salt, which tells them exactly where he lives.
Well, no, that's not what it does. They look into his background and find that they've already gone to his apartment and he's not there. And the sea salt was part of the training.
So
they went to his. Is this where he fell asleep again?
No, I think it's just where I'm not
so
very bright. So
they went to his apartment and they saw all of his training equipment. And they talked to the neighbour, and the neighbour said he was practicing his martial arts all the time. At one point, he came out and his face was just covered in blood because he was putting his hands in a bowl of something and rubbing it on his face. And Donnie Yen character says, it's sea salt. It's an old technique used to thicken and toughen the skin. You get sea salt and you scrub it on your face and skin and it hardens it and thickens it. So that could be why when the guy cut his leg, he didn't really react.
That makes a lot more sense than what I thought was, he must live near the water.
No, they look into his family and find his grandma has a house, and that's why they go to the water.
He may have just got himself another bag. So they go to the grandmother's house.
She's not there. She doesn't appear in the whole film.
There. No. I don't know why.
Maybe she's dead. Maybe she's in a wheelchair talking to him.
Maybe she's in the sequel. Finds memorial tablet and some fresh air flowers, and you realise that the woman with cancer that we've been seeing in flashback has actually just died recently. And then we see quite a harrowing scene. Again, it's a flashback, but I think probably to like the day before, where she's really, really struggling, and then he essentially puts her out of her misery.
They strangle her to death on the bed.
Yeah,
it's pretty brutal.
It does feel a bit. Yeah.
Then you see him. So they realise that he's probably going to come back to the house soon. So they cover the area in surveillance equipment, and they say, right, we'll clear the area. We'll take a kilometres distance, and we'll wait for him to come back. And just after he's had this flashback of him, we see him riding in a boat to come back to the house with some flowers. Yes. For his wife that we've now seen that he's just brutally strangled to death. And he's smiling away, thinking about his wife. And I thought, wow, okay. I like you even less now.
I think he's troubled.
I think so, yes. Having killed 4 men and his wife, troubled is a good word.
Yes.
Crackpot, mental is another one.
They're thinking that Donnie Yen's character has colluded. So the police find him, don't they? And then he pulls a gun on them.
Well, they see the video of the fact that the killer visited him in prison and they talked on the phone. And so at that point, they're convinced of it.
Yep.
He's had previous contact and he did this. So they try to grab him and
that's right.
arrest
And
him.
did he take the gun off them in typical martial arts fashion and turns it on them? And as I put here, is he an accomplice? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Then the bad guy, as I've called him here brilliantly, he takes a police radio.
Oh, no, it goes to his house.
Yeah.
And walks in. And then we see that suddenly Sin walks into the room carrying her sword.
Yes, the foreshadowed sword.
Yes, and she's really good with it.
She is.
She wants to, take him out herself.
Well, and she's pretty brutal as well. She's like, I've got the ashes
of
here,
your dead wife.
And if you don't, leave my guy alone, I'm going to take these ashes away.
Mm-hmm. So he goes bananas. Yep. She's really, really good with the sword, and they're absolutely destroying his grandma's house.
And it's kind of cutting between that and her fight with him, which is amazing, and Donnie Yen's character basically using
running and escaping the police.
and using a stick a bit like he did in Rogue One to take out all the police.
It's true. Yeah, this was first, so Rogue One copied it.
That's true. Well, they cast someone who could use a stick.
Man with stick. What have you got? Got Donnie Yen. I've got a man who brushes the floors. See what this guy can do.
So she does very well until she gets stabbed in the arm.
Yes. He kind of defeats her and then stabs her through the shoulder. He's pretty brutal. It looks like he's killed her, and then he picks up a police radio and he runs off. And Donnie gets to the house and finds his girlfriend on the floor bleeding.
Yes, bleeding out.
So he calls for an ambulance, tells them, pretending there's a cop, and the cop is down.
Yep.
And then he goes on the rampage and runs after the killer. Yeah,
and he's like, she's like, can you stay with me? When you stay with me, I'm really hurt. And he's like, nope, I'm off. He smashes the ashes. And then there's an epic fight on a boat.
The two of them are going at each other.
Very, very James Bond.
Yes. Racing through the channels on the boat.
Throwing things at the police.
Yeah. And then do they both get knocked out of the boat, or does one get knocked out of the boat? I can't remember.
I think they might both get knocked off the boat, but I'm not quite sure how we then suddenly find everything out. And I've got a list here of everything we find out, but I can't remember how we found it out.
So I've put, there's a boat chase and then a crash, and the killer escapes.
So maybe does Madam catch up with
Donnie?
And does he tell Madam, or does he tell us?
Yeah, he tells the Madam he admits to getting out of prison in order to help protect
his girlfriend. So he knew that he was going to work up the way up this list, and I think he'd more or less said to him that he was also going to threaten his girlfriend, because number one on the list was dun dun dun.
Who?
A homo.
Oh right, he's on the list. He's
the number one of the list. Yeah, so he's working from 7 to 1, but the reason he needed him out of prison, and the reason he went in to tell him he was going to threaten his girlfriend, was because he wanted to fight him. And I think he said you could have got out of prison at any time, but you didn't have a reason, so I need to give you a reason to come out. So the whole case is a big circle.
Yeah.
That yes, he came out to stop this guy, but he wasn't actually doing it with the intention of solving the case. He was doing it with the intention of saving his girlfriend and potentially killing this guy. And
he said to Madam that if I had told you all of this, you wouldn't have needed me and you wouldn't have let me out. So I kind of lied to get out to protect her. But equally, it didn't help because the killer still kept going through all of the different guys and taking them all out one at a time. Yeah. So they're both a bit to blame, really. Obviously, the killer more so, but Donnie's partially to blame for letting it happen and not revealing maybe to the police earlier what was going on, and they could have maybe apprehended.
And it was quite clever because, I really like this bit, because at the start it was a bit like, oh, I recognise that name on the news. But the reality was the note said, watch the news tonight.
Yes.
So he was already listening out and thought, oh gosh, you have gone through with it. I thought that was a brilliant bit of writing, because it just seemed like a throwaway and very obvious thing at the start was, he heard the name on the prison TV, but actually he was intentionally there to see what was on the news, which
and
made
to
it
see if it happened. Yeah, as the
to
killer
make
said it would.
Powerful. So the madam has been taken off the case.
Yeah, she's in trouble, but she's still digging into it like a good cop.
She is, and then she thinks, "Hang on, maybe there's a list in this house."
Yeah, she goes back to Grandma's house to look around because she thinks there's something else might be there. She keeps flashing back on something as well. There's like a chest, wooden chest with some candles on.
Which is one of the things we kept seeing in the kind of arty flashbacks earlier in the film as well.
To go with the Chinese opera on a tape deck.
Yep.
And someone painting something. So she finds the wooden chest, and on the wall behind it, she pulls off this. It's not wallpaper, but sort of. And we can see the list of all of the names of the people that he was going to target, and they're all on there. But there's 8 names.
Yes.
Not 7. Which slightly confused me to begin with.
Unless he is, maybe it's because he's the 8th. Maybe it was 8, not 7. And the reason he listed the 7 because he didn't include himself. I think that's what it is. He's working his way from 8 to number 1, and number 1 is Donnie Yen's character.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah. So then we have the what we've been building up to all the way through the film, which is the big end fight.
No, that's who the 8th one is. It's the guy in the truck.
Oh.
So the 8th guy, the 8th name, so the killer goes to get the 8th person, and he's a truck driver. And the truck is driving towards him, and he steps out in the road, and the truck just stops.
Yep.
And instead of this 8th guy getting out, it's Donnie Yen's character.
It's Donnie Yen.
So he knew who the 8th person was. And then we see the guy who's the truck driver on the phone ringing Madam saying, "Hello, my name is so-and-so." And she goes, "Well, I've just read your name on a wall." And he goes, "Yes, I've got a message from Hahou Mo. He said you should come here." So,
yes, that's right.
And Donnie knew he would go after that person. So he's said, "Nope, you're not getting to him." And it's just him and the killer stood in the middle of a motorway.
And both ready to die, which I think is the big thing of this.
Yes.
They both, they are
He's pushed him and pushed him.
happy
and
to
pushed him.
kill each other, and also they're willing to put their life on the line.
Yes.
And that it's like, it's a big end fight by a lorry, which makes more sense now you've explained it. You see the killer using moves, but he's almost more animalistic because he's so desperate. It's almost like his wife has died. He's got nothing to lose. This is the purpose of everything he's ever done, and it's really brutal. But what I really like is kind of when they do kind of cancel each other out. It is kind of like blow for blow, and then it looks like the killer's going to fall in front of another lorry that's going past, but the main guy pulls him out the way, and he just goes, "I'm not finished with you yet," and wants to carry on, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, see, it's too easy for him to get rid of, because in another film they'd have that fight and someone would kick him and a car would come by or a truck and just splat him. They'd be like, or
he'd be electrocuted on the railway line.
Yes, always the third rail. Zzz, and that's the end of him.
Yeah. And I put it here, there's a big rebar fight. I think it was rebar.
It was a load of almost like bamboo, but long poles again. And it's a flashback to the one we had with the swords, where they both lost swords and got pipes again. And it's that kind of thing. They use the pipes to pole vault across the motorway at one point.
They do.
And on the back of different trucks. And then they start fighting with them.
We've all tried it. Come on, Steve.
Only on a weekend.
Yes. Maybe we'll try it this weekend.
Well, okay. So they have this massive fight, and then they finally get rid of the stupid pole vault. And it's just fists again. It's back to just hard.
Yeah, and I guess the point, he's ready to kill him. Mm-hmm. And then there's a bit we forgot to mention earlier. It's another big foreshadowing bit, but it feels so throwaway earlier in the film you forget it. So his girlfriend put a piece of string around his wrist.
Yes.
To say, look, this is to stop you. You almost wait for it to stop you in your fists of fury. It felt like a bit. It does feel like a Bruce Lee film in many ways. But she kind of says, this is to keep you under control now.
Yes.
And so he looks at this string, as if to say, well, I shouldn't really kill him.
He's kind of lost it at this point. You can see him. He's starting to enjoy what he's doing.
Yeah, you see how alike they are, and that's
And how he used to be, you remember? Because this is what happened to him in the first place, was that he wanted to defeat this other guy to prove that he was the best, and in doing that, he went too far and killed him by accident. And now it's about to happen again.
It's happening again, exactly, in reverse. So I put here, ridiculous green screen fight under a lorry.
The CGI on that was pretty poor.
Ropey, yeah. But then the bad guy is being dragged along, isn't he? They're both being dragged along. Are they by the lorry?
No, it's just Donnie Yen's character.
Just Donnie Yen, yes.
He
and
knocks
then
him out of the way, and then a lorry catches him and drags him along the floor.
Drags him along. And then again, the kind of flip then is the killer kind of drags him off because he doesn't want him to be killed that way. He wants to do it himself.
Yes.
But hang on, who's this?
Well, he seems to be... The killer sort of says that Kung Fu is for killing, martial arts are for killing. Yeah. It's not for fancy dancing, as he said, sort of thing. And he says, I won, I beat you. And Donnie Yen's character blacks out. So at this point, he's been dragged along a truck for sort of 12 foot. And his back is he's left a bloody streak across the road. And we see him looking over him, and he blacks out. And then when he wakes up, the killer's just next to him, staring at him. And then it flashes back a couple of minutes, and we see Madam turn up on her motorbike. And it's death by cop.
It is.
Because he wants to die. He wanted to die at the hands of Donnie Yen's character, who's now passed out, so he can't help him. And he charges... Go on.
I think, doesn't he say that he's number one now?
Yes.
And then I think Donnie Yen's character goes, yeah, well, you are.
No, because he charges Madam, sort of saying that he's number one.
Right.
And she just shoots him dead.
Yeah. And he's letting her shoot him because he's basically, he knew his wife was dying. She's dead. The only thing that the only ambition he had was to be number one, and in his head he was. So therefore, he's done everything he needs to do. He's found peace. He no longer needs to be number one, which is more about the other character, isn't it? He basically says, I think, when he comes to. So is his girlfriend still alive?
Yes.
Fine. Okay.
So it then goes to 3 months later.
Yes, he's back in prison.
He's back in prison, so he's working off the rest of his sentence. But now all of the other prisoners respect him. The 17
guys respect him,
and not just for kicking the shit out of them.
No, not just. No. And then he gets let out to become an instructor again, and then we see him aging.
Well, so they review his case. Madam comes in and reviews his case, and in return, he's allowed to become an instructor. So the woman in the picture with him, we get this voiceover. Right. Is his girlfriend, and he says it's more about not about being number one, but being a part of something.
And legacy, which is essentially the teaching he should have had from his teacher in the first place. But then you get this kind of photograph that ages. And you see him then kind
of... With a baby and his wife.
It's like, we are not having a sequel. That's what that said to me.
It did, yeah. So there was him and his wife, and now wife and a baby, and it jumps forward, and the school grows.
And a beard.
And there's a kid, and then it's a taller kid, and the number of students grows, and then at the very end... He's an older man with like 400 students and his wife and grown-up child all stood around him and says it's not about being number one. It never crossed his mind again, is what it says.
And then it's got this really cool bit at the end where they thank loads of people. Did you sit through that?
No.
Okay. So,
go on,
such a Philistine. So basically, he just said we'd like to thank the following people who helped make this film, and then it shows you that nearly all the incidental characters are either ex-martial artists or stuntmen from years gone by. So Jackie Chan's troupe and people like that, and it's kind of it goes back to each of the scenes, like where they get given clues, or where they're incidental characters in the background, or people they fought really quickly, and all the people the main people they fought, and they're all kind of name checked, and they name checked Jackie Chan and some other people that were in the film, and then. When I was a teenager, I used to read two magazines, one called Combat Magazine and one called Impact Magazine. Now, Combat Magazine was about martial arts movies, and Impact Magazine was about action movies, predominantly B movies, a lot of Hong Kong films, a lot of straight to kind of videos. This is where I used to go and read my reviews to watch then the kind of stuff that most people didn't bother with. But it was edited by a guy called Bay Logan. And Bay Logan has gone on to write films, and then I think he runs, like he's a producer and runs a big film company now, but he got a big thank you. But then he also was the guy in Flashback at the start who the main character killed.
Okay. I did not know that.
Bay Logan. So it's quite. It did remind me of old things like Police Story and stuff, where you used to have that. And they did say, this is us trying to do a return to, the Hong Kong action movies of the past.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's it, and that's the end of the film.
Yes. Relatively short, hour and 40 minutes, I believe, with a small sleep break.
Yeah. Full sleep break. Yeah, it's slightly longer for me because I kept having to stop it, make some notes, play again, stop it. Oh, God, it's like, no, stop that, and then play the next. So, but I got through it. It's one of these. It wasn't a film that dragged. Sometimes
not at all.
we watch an action film and I think, I'm just a bit bored, and I'm making notes whilst it's still playing.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing with this, you've got the combination of the plot moves along at a pace in terms of the case, but also there's so many good fights that it's like you couldn't be bored, I don't think.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, and one we neither of us have seen before. So
no,
yes.
No.
Shall we give our scores?
Yeah, let's do.
You have no respect for logic. Enough with the yak. What is your score?
Some scores.
Who's going to go? Do you want to go first? Because I suggested it. Do you want to?
Yes. Okay. So, it's my first Donnie Yen action film. I'd previously, probably like you, only seen him in Rogue One. It was better than I expected in some ways. I know it's a modern martial arts film, but I haven't watched many of those recently. I watched a lot like you when I was younger, so most of the action films that I've tended to see in the last 10 or 15 years probably have been things like, John Wick and Dredd, and even a couple of the modern Arnie action films. And some of them are good, some of them are Parker bad.
Yeah, Parker bad. Parker. No, nothing is Parker bad except Parker. Gee.
Some of them are really, really good, like, The Equalizer, and even some of the martial arts styled ones that we've had with, Jason Statham. Some of them can be absolutely turgid crap, and it's the odd one that's good. So I kind of went in with low expectations, even though I knew that it wasn't a Western film, because just my recent experience of martial arts films has not been good. So I was surprised. It moved at a fast pace. There was lots of action. The fight scenes were incredible. The subtitles didn't bother me. Don't bother me at all. I'm not somebody who's fussed by that. He was really, really good. There was a bit of Basil exposition at times on other things, but I think they did that just to keep the film moving.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I think he's a really good lead. And some of the actors were good too. I can't really think of anyone I thought was weak. So I'd say it's good, but it wasn't great. So for that reason, I'm only going to give it 3 bags, because we don't do half bags.
We don't.
So yeah,
so
3 out
I
of
still
5.
think 3 out of 5 is not bad. It's in the higher word for things that are higher. So yeah, the fights I thought were phenomenal. And then somebody who watched a lot of martial arts films over the years, some very good, some with Billy Blanks in, some with Billy Blanks and Roddy Piper in together. Seriously, there was a time when I'd watch anything, not so much anymore. But I've also watched a lot of older Hong Kong films, and I just thought it was refreshing in a way, because, like you say, you kind of to have the balance really, because quite often the films like this can be amazing fights, but the plot doesn't do very much, or there's such a massive cheesy element to it that it kind of takes the edge off it. But although there are some humorous moments, it's played quite straight, really, overall.
Yeah.
Donnie Yen, I think, is brilliant, and he's just got something captivating about him. He's got, I'd say, a Bruce Lee kind of quality about him, that kind of stillness. And I like in this film that it wasn't black and white. You didn't really know. He's still not a particularly. Yeah, okay, he gets redeemed at the end, but he's not a particularly positive lead character in a way, which I liked. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was different. I say the fights were amazing, and no real drop in quality at any point. Like you say, the acting was really good. Much of the film did play out like other similar films, But I think it's very hard to do a procedural serial killer thing without that happening, just because there have been so many made.
Yeah.
But I think the role of the madam, the history between the two characters, the reversal kind of it being, actually, it wasn't just he overheard a thing in the prison and got out. Because if it had just been that, if it had just been, oh yeah, he's a martial arts guy, he saw a thing on the news.
It just happened to see something on TV at the right time.
Then that is like lots of other films, which usually the final third is really cringeworthy because of that, because there's no real setup. What I really liked here was the end of the film had a lot of meaning, and there was a reason for all. There's nothing happened in this film without a reason. Which, and it's only an hour and 40 minutes, so it kind of reminded me of some of the older films that we've talked about more than the modern films in a way, because of that. So yeah, and where else do you see crazy wire work in a police procedural? So yeah, I'm giving it 3 bags as well, which doesn't sound high enough from what I've just said. And actually, the more we talked about it tonight, the more I came to like it. But I think it's that lack of half bags thing, because I was tempted. I don't think it doesn't quite deserve a 4, but it doesn't really deserve a 3 either. So if we were giving half bags, this would be a film that I would do that too. But we're not.
No.
So I'm not. So I've had to go. I haven't rounded up. I've rounded down because I'm a pessimist. Yeah, but it makes me want to see more Donnie Yen films.
Yes.
Definitely. If we were still doing trilogies, we could have done. But yes.
Did you see Kung Fu Killer? What do you think of it? Are you a fan of Donnie Yen? Have you seen any of his other films? What's going on? Get in touch with us. You can email us, bagsofaction@gmail.com. Come onto the Facebook group and join and chat to us there. Follow us on Twitter. That's enough shilling for today.
There we are.
Good night.
Good bags.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.